Hello everyone and welcome to the Fide World Cup 2021 Semifinals Day 1. Let's see the game played between Vladimir fedoseev and Sergey karjakin. Fedoseev has the white pieces and he opens with d4. Karjakin replies with knight to f6. Then c4, e6, knight to f3, the anti-Nimzo Indian. Then d5 and now knight to c3, the queen's gambit decline, 3 knights variation. The most usual common lines are bishop to e7, bishop to b4, c6 and c5. Karjakin replies with c5. He goes for the semi-terrace defense. Then c captures on d5, c captures on d4, queen captures on d4, e captures on d5 and now bishop to g5 pinning the knight. Then bishop to e7. Unpin the knight, develops the bishop and prepares for castle. Then e3 and now black castle. Then bishop to e2. White prepares for castle. Then h6 attacks the bishop. Then bishop back to h4 and now knight to c6 attacks the queen. Queen to d3. Then queen to b6. Then white castle and now rook to d8. Then knight b5 and now bishop to g4. Then knight f2 d4. Now bishop captures on e2, queen captures on e2 and then a6 attacks the knight. Then knight d4 captures on knight c6 and attacks the bishop and the rook. So b captures on c6 and then knight to c3. Then queen b4 attacks the bishop. Bishop to g3. Then knight to e4 and now bishop to e5. Then bishop d6 offering to exchange the bishops. Then white played bishop captures on d6, rook captures on d6 and then rook a to c1 and now a5. Then rook f to d1 and then rook to e8. Then queen to c2 and now knight captures on c3. Then b captures on c3 and now queen to c5. Then rook d4, rook to e4, h3 making room for the king. Then rook d2 e6 and now rook b1. Then g6, queen b2, king to g7 and now rook b to d1. Then king h7, a4, h5, queen a1 and now h4. Then queen b2 and now rook e8. Then rook b1. Then rook e7 and now queen a1. Then queen a7 and now queen b2. Then queen c5. Then rook b to d1 and now rook e8. Then rook c1, rook e7, rook to b1, king to g7, queen to a1, queen a7, rook b to d1, rook captures on d4, c captures on d4, rook to b7, then queen c3, queen to a6, rook to c1, rook to b4, queen captures on c6, queen captures on c6, rook captures on c6, then rook captures on a4, and now king to f1, then rook to a2, stopping the king to move the second rank, then rook to c5, and now a4, then rook captures on d5, and now a3, then rook a5, and now f5, then rook a6, king to f7, then d5, g5, f3, rook a1 check, king to f2, rook to a2 check, king to g1, rook a1 check, king to h2, a2, and now e4, f captures on e4, f captures on e4, then king to e7, and now e5, then rook to d1, and now rook a7 check, then king e8, and now rook a8 check, then king e7, and now rook a7 check, king to e8, and now finally rook captures on a2, then rook captures on d5, then rook e2, then king e7, e6, rook d8, g4, h captures on g3, king captures on g3, rook to d6, king to g4, rook captures on e6, rook captures on e6 check, king captures on e6, and now king captures on g5, and in this position the both players agrees to a draw because the black king easily stops this pawn to promote a queen. So that's the game. Thank you for watching. See you soon.